A young Marine, just 18 years old, killed in a car accident on his way to work.
Tonight, as his family tries to cope with the tragedy, they're calling on Maryland to take action and remove the controversial guardrail involved in the accident.
Consumer investigative reporter Susan Hogan has been reporting on these guardrails for months and is here now with a story. Susan?
This is so heartbreaking. Well, Michael Carter Jr. is not the first person to die after crashing into a Lindsay X-Light guardrail, but his mother is doing what she can to make sure he's the last.
Around his family, he was very quiet. He didn't have a lot to say, but when he said something, it meant something.
Sandra Johnson Carter describes her son Michael as loving, humble, hardworking.
I knew that whatever the challenge was, he would push 100% and make it.
Carter was the youngest of 6 children. His oldest sister, Jasmine, remembers him as the good kid.
He never gave my mom any issues. He never had to worry.
Only 18 years old, Carter was just starting a career in the Marines. The morning of February 7th, he was driving to the recruiting office where he worked on Maryland's Eastern Shore. For some unknown reason, he swerved off the road and crashed into the end of a guardrail. He died at the hospital.
A senseless crash. And I'd lost something that was close to me. Because he was like my right arm. I did everything with him and for him all his life.
Carter's family went through the motions, planning a memorial service and burial at Arlington National Cemetery. But Carter's mother couldn't stop thinking about that accident, so she got on the computer and typed in "death by guardrail."
And then I started just reading more and getting more information and come to find out that he was not the only person that had been killed by hitting an X-Light in terminal.
At least 7 other people have died after crashing into X-Light guardrail end pieces. 5 lawsuits have been filed against the manufacturer, claiming the X-Light is defective, in some cases spearing vehicles instead of deflecting them. Maryland State Police and the State Highway Administration are still investigating Carter's crash and have not determined whether the X-Light was at fault. These photos from the accident scene show the guardrail was ripped off.
Right now we have no information to indicate that it did pierce the vehicle. So that's the whole idea of waiting for the reconstruction report.
But Carter's mother isn't waiting. She's written a letter to Governor Larry Hogan and other state officials urging them to remove the more than 900 X-Lights already installed on Maryland's roads.
You know, how many more Michaels, my son, have to die?
At least 10 states are currently replacing X-Lights, some of them due to concerns over safety, others as part of an effort to update all roadside barriers to products that meet new crash test standards. But Maryland says it has no plans to follow suit.
We'll certainly continue to listen to our partners in other states going forward, but just because one state does something doesn't mean that we're going to follow blindly and lockstep behind.
An answer that doesn't sit well with Carter's mother.
My son was out. He was serving his country. And I want his country, I want Maryland to serve him by removing these products.
Now, the X-Light is no longer being installed because it does not meet updated crash test standards, but thousands of the guardrail end pieces are already in place all across the country. Now, the maker of X-Light, Lindsay Transportation Solutions, sent News 4 a statement reading in part, "There is no road safety equipment that can prevent injury every time a driver fails to stay on the road. When properly installed and maintained, roadside hardware like X-Light will reduce the number and severity of injuries sustained in car accidents." There is no standing in between a mom and who's just lost a child. Boy.
Very strong of her to share her story with you.
Susan, she was so brave.
Susan, thank you.
You're welcome.
3 months after a Maryland Marine died in a car accident, News 4 is getting answers for his family.
Private First Class Michael Carter Jr. was killed when his car hit a guardrail end piece that's been the focus of a News 4 consumer investigation for months.
Susan Hogan is here with the new developments in a story you'll see only on News 4. Susan?
Well, that's right. So a number of lawsuits have been filed against the manufacturer of the guardrail end cap, claiming it is defective. The state is still investigating Carter's crash and hasn't determined what role the guardrail played in his death. But his mother has already started her fight to have the product removed from Maryland's roads.
I just never thought that I would be going through this ever in my life.
Sandra Johnson Carter carries her son's photo in military boots everywhere, a reminder of the battle she's now fighting.
I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to give up this fight. I'm going to write letters to everyone who I think could have a role in having this product removed.
That product, this guardrail end piece known as the X-Lite. 18-year-old Michael Carter Jr. died February 7th after running off the road and hitting one of these on the Eastern Shore. A News 4 consumer investigation has found at least 7 other people have died after crashing into X-Lites. This video from the manufacturer's website shows what the guardrail should do when it's hit, but in some cases, it has pierced vehicles instead. That doesn't appear to have happened in Carter's accident, but this photo shows the guardrail bent and ripped off. News 4 was granted exclusive access to see the evidence. The crumpled piece of metal is now sitting in a warehouse. State highway officials will determine whether the guardrail functioned properly once they receive the final report from the Maryland State Police. A preliminary report said that would take 30 to 45 days to complete. We were later told it could be 90 days. Have you ever heard from the state police with an update as to where the investigation stands?
I haven't received an update since I last contacted and spoke to them, and that would have been in March.
We contacted state police for an update as well. When we didn't get any answers, we decided to ask the governor about it. Do you know where this investigation stands?
I really don't. I know it's still under investigation, so we're not able to really talk about it. I don't have any more details than you do. But
we let the governor know that Carter's family had never been contacted by his office nor the State Highway Administration about the investigation. Later that same day, his mother received a call from the SHA.
He offered his condolences to the death of Michael and again repeated the fact that Maryland would not knowingly have products out there that will cause the loss of life.
Then a letter from the governor himself saying in part, "It was recently brought to my attention that you have not been satisfied with the state's response to your inquiries regarding Maryland's use of X-Lite guardrails. For that, I apologize. We should have done better." After we reached out to state police once again, we were told that the final report is expected in the near future, and Sandra received a phone call from the investigator saying he hoped it would be complete this week.
I definitely feel that if News 4 was not on top of this, that this would have been a problem that would have been swept under the rug and just went away.
Now, in the 3 months since her son's death, Sandra has taken on the role of activist to have these guardrails removed, and she is already seeing results. We will have that part of our story tonight at 11.
I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to give up this fight.
Sandra Johnson Carter is a mother on a mission. Her son, Michael Carter Jr., died 3 months ago after crashing into an X-Lite guardrail. Not long after the accident, she learned he's not the only one. There have been several.
A guardrail pierced her car and she was killed instantly.
We first introduced you to Steve Eimers last fall. His 17-year-old daughter, Hannah, died in 2016 after hitting an X-Lite in Tennessee.
And I want a national recall of the X-Lite.
Maybe my son would still be alive.
Johnson Carter recently joined Eimers in Tennessee to testify in front of the state legislature. Lawmakers there ultimately passed a joint resolution calling for a national recall of the X-Lite, and the governor signed it last week.
I want Maryland to act like the state of Tennessee.
Johnson Carter is now pushing Maryland to remove the hundreds of X-Lites already in place in the state, and she's found support in one lawmaker.
I have had positive response from Delegate Charles Otto.
Delegate Charles Otto serves on the Environment and Transportation Committee in Maryland's House of Delegates. He tells News 4 he is working to have the X-Lites removed.
If there's alternative barriers there, we need to put them in place. I think it's not just helping their families, nothing's going to bring back their loss, but it's certainly we can keep other families from suffering the same thing.
Maryland State Police are still investigating Carter's crash. Once the final report is in, the State Highway Administration will determine whether the guardrail functioned properly. But no matter the outcome, Carter's mother says she won't give up her fight.
Not just Maryland, but the other states that have the X lights up. Push even harder with them to have them removed.
We asked the Federal Highway Administration about the state of Tennessee's resolution urging a national recall. The agency sent us a statement saying, in part, our research and repeated calls for information from the states do not support claims that this specific type of guardrail performs differently than others.
There is some new information in the News 4 Consumer investigation that involves controversial guardrails that line our roads. Maryland State Police have released their final report in an accident that claimed the life of a young Marine. Consumer investigative reporter Susan Hogan with the latest developments.
Well, we've been telling you about the concerns surrounding the X-Lite guardrail end pieces for months now. Several lawsuits claim that they are defective and in some cases are actually making accidents worse. Michael Carter Jr. died after crashing into an X-Lite on Route 13 in Princess Anne in February. Now, Carter was driving to work at the Marine Corps Recruiting Center in Salisbury. Maryland State Police say Carter drifted off the left side of the road, then overcorrected and hit the guardrail on the right shoulder. They believe he was drowsy and say tests showed no drugs or alcohol in his system. Carter was wearing his seatbelt. Investigators estimate that Carter was driving about 64 miles an hour when he drifted, and his car was going about 42 miles an hour when it actually impacted that guardrail. Now, the Maryland State Highway Administration will now evaluate that report and determine whether the guardrail actually functioned properly in the crash. The manufacturer, meantime, of that guardrail, the X-Lite, they say it is safe and it has passed crash tests. Back to you.
A major change is coming to some of our roads following a News 4 consumer investigation.
We've been telling you for months about the safety concerns surrounding a particular type of guardrail.
Consumer investigative reporter Susan Hogan is here with the action now being taken by transportation officials. Susan?
Well, that's right. So the controversy centers around this particular type of guardrail end piece known as the X-Lite. Several lawsuits claim it is defective. We've shown you how it has actually spared vehicles in accidents with sometimes deadly consequences. Tonight, Maryland is working to remove X-Lites from its roads.
I'm fighting that so that no other family has to be here. But
we first introduced you to Steve Eimers last fall. His 17-year-old daughter Hannah was killed after crashing into an X-Lite in Tennessee in 2016.
A guardrail pierced her car and she was killed instantly.
Eimers learned his daughter was not the only one to die this way. For the last year and a half, he has met with state and federal officials all over the country, pushing to have the guardrails removed.
And I just never thought that I would be going through this ever in my life.
Earlier this year, this Maryland mother joined his fight. Sandra Johnson Carter's son Michael died after hitting an X-Lite on the Eastern Shore in February. She started her own campaign to have the X-Lites removed from Maryland's roads. She found support in one state lawmaker, but she won't need that anymore. The Maryland State Highway Administration has now decided to replace all X-Lites currently installed in the state.
There are about 1,000 of them. It's a small percentage of the 52,000+ that we have out there today.
SHA Administrator Greg Slater says the work will begin immediately. He tells News 4 that X-Lites on roads with a speed limit of 55 or faster will be removed first. Slater delivered the news to Johnson Carter personally last Friday during a meeting at her home.
They were sympathetic, they were warm, they were kind, and they made it about me, my family, and my son. And the removal of the X-Lites just put the icing on the top of the cake.
I did a lot of listening. I wanted to talk to Mrs. Carter and really learn about Michael, and she is an amazing woman, and he was an amazing young man, and it was really important for me to hear her perspective on Michael's crash.
Slater tells News 4 that the SHA was unable to determine whether the guardrail failed in Carter's crash. He calls the state's decision to remove X-Lites an engineering-based one. But Carter's mom believes a combination of factors led to the call.
I believe that Mike's death and Steve Eimer's work may have helped in the decision. I don't think I would be here today at all without News 4 helping, making phone calls, following up, and staying on the story.
She's now shedding tears of joy instead of heartbreak for the first time since her son's death.
No one else will die the way my son or died. Maryland roadways are going to be safe, and that makes me happy. These are tears of joy.
So Maryland now says it could take a couple of years to replace all of the X lights. Virginia is also in the process of removing X lights from roads where the speed limit there is 55 or faster. DC does not use the X lights. Now, the maker of the X light insists that the guardrail is not defective and says many factors play into the outcome of the accidents. In the meantime, this guy Carter's 19th birthday is coming up next week, and to honor him, his family has started a fundraiser to provide clean water to families in need. We have got a link in the NBC Washington app for you. Just search Marine Fundraiser.
Wow, great work, Susan.
Thank you.